Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my January 2026 reading vlog. It feels crazy to be saying 2026. We are in the second quarter of the century. Isn't that weird? So for this month, I have big plans already. For my 100 Epic Reads of a Lifetime poster book, which is right here, I am reading War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. The big boy. I will be taking approximately 2 months to read this book. I want to take my time with it and I want to really enjoy it. I have 8 more books off of the 100 Epic Reads of a Lifetime poster, so I plan, at least for the really big ones, to slow down and not read one a month like I did the previous 5 years. As for my other books that I'm reading this month, I have already finished one book and I'm about to start one book. So the book that I've already read is the comic adaptation of The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. The adaptation is by Stephanie Williams and Sass Milledge. Now, this was a very quick read that I did on the very first day of the year, obviously, and I thought that it was just fine. I only gave it 3 stars. It cut out a lot of what made the original first book hook me, and that is just in the character details. The plot is here properly, but it is completely hounded by exposition when a lot of the book was descriptive and in the minds of the characters. So while you were in the dream stuff, in the forest, dealing with all of the supernatural stuff going on, you were in the characters' heads and you were able to help yourself figure it out when they were figuring it out. In the comic, there is no room for a lot of internal monologue and internal turmoil, so everything is exposited on page, which is fine enough if you just want to get to the proper plot of the story and don't really care about the characters' inner monologues. And as a comic, this is adapted exactly as I thought it was going to. However, I thought the book just had a lot more going for the characters in their inner thoughts, desires, likes, dislikes. You don't get a lot of their friendship in this. It's a lot of like visual montage of them being friends rather than sweet character moments. A lot of my favorite lines aren't in here. A lot of my favorite moments with Noah aren't in here. And I just don't think that this was my favorite form of adaptation for this story. Plus, the visuals were incredibly disappointing because this is a dream world. This is about old kings. This is about magic. And none of that is really in here. The art style is beautiful, but it's just not capturing the dreaminess and the supernatural and the magic of this town or the characters. So that was my feelings on that. And the other book that I am starting this month is The Possession of Alba Diaz by Isabel Canas. I've already read Vampires of El Norte, so this will be my second novel from the author, and I am looking forward to it. I think it's a pretty easy enough concept of a woman who believes that she is being possessed. So that is how I am starting off my year. Stay tuned for more updates soon. just to do a few quick updates. I finally have my first DNF of the year. I stopped reading The Possession of Alba Diaz by Isabel Canas at about page 122. So the possession had taken place and nothing was happening. I realized I didn't really care what was going to happen to the characters and whether she lived or died from this possession, so I just stopped reading, and I think that would have been best because this wouldn't have gotten more than a 3. I was really bored by it. I am currently reading The Bewitching, and I am enjoying this one a lot more. I enjoy the perspective characters of Minerva and Alba the most. I don't really care about the reading that that Minerva is doing at this lady's house, like the things she's reading. I don't care about that storyline or that mystery. I care about everything else in the novel. So far, almost halfway through, and doing a good job so far. I am also 30 pages into War and Peace. I have my baby toe in it. I'm getting used to all the characters and all of their discussions and stuff, and so far I am really enjoying it. It is just sort of on the back burner while I am reading The Bewitching at the moment, but so far I do like it. I do like the writing style, and I think this is going to be a good one. And finally, for my comics, I read Batman Detective Comics issues 708 to 711, and that is the storyline where famously Batman has to use a gun in order to stop something that Deathstroke is doing. So I really enjoyed all of these. These were really fun and just a fun little mini arc. I can't count them on Goodreads because I don't want each issue to be a book, if you know what I mean. So this is just one. I'm counting this as one book that I read, like one little mini story. So that's my updates for now. Stay tuned. This is just another update to say that I have finished The Bewitching by Silvia Moreno Garcia, and I think I will be giving that one 3 stars. As for the rest of how the story happened, I still agree with what I said earlier, that the reading that Minerva was doing, that character perspective, was my least favorite, and that my favorite character perspective was of Alba, that being Minerva's great-grandmother, and the situation she was in where her family was cursed by a witch, and she was falling under the grasp of her uncle Arturo. And I think I liked Minerva's perspective as well. I liked that Minerva was sort of this blunt, straightforward, very structured character, and her prose reflected that. One thing that I did not enjoy about Mexican Gothic was that the writing style of that one was very explanatory in a way where it should have been left to more mystery, and I think this time around the author kind of got that down by having the 3 characters' different perspectives leave a little bit more of an air of mystery to it, which I enjoyed a lot better. So as I was saying, I really enjoyed Minerva's character, who was very blunt, very straightforward, and very focused, and her prose reflected that. That was a very interesting character to get inside of, especially when she had to socially interact with different people, and especially people of a higher financial class. So that was really interesting. And I really enjoyed Alba's storyline. However, I do know that it is just completely the movie Hitchcock's Shadow of a Doubt. However, there have been plenty of media that have been based on Shadow of a Doubt, which have turned out to be really good. So I'm not bothered by that. I just wanted to acknowledge that that whole storyline was basically just jumping off of the premise of Shadow of a Doubt. And I enjoyed the entire storyline that occurred with Alba's character character. I thought it was very, very scary, intriguing, thrilling, and just an exciting dynamic between uncle and niece. My least favorite perspective was, of course, the author, that being Beatrice, the author that Minerva is doing her thesis on, and the character perspective she is reading when there is a different character, Virginia, who goes missing. One thing that I really, really hate is an attempt to do an epistolary version of like a character's perspective. So it is technically her journal that they're reading. However, at the beginning of that perspective, Beatrice says, I am writing this decades after it happened, and I am writing it in novel format. Just write a novel at that point. Why would you make your journal into a novel format? A writer would not want to do that. That's so tiring. Why couldn't have it just been journal format, where at first it's just like, had dinner with blank, visited blank, called blank, right? Just boring details of someone's day. And then eventually talk about, my friend's acting weird, my friend had something weird happen to them, oh no. And then eventually your worries, you start to write about how worried you are about your friend, and then eventually her going missing. That would be more interesting to write journal entries about every single day, have them be mundane, and then build up into something mysterious. So to me, to just have the author cheap out and write it in like a novel format is just really disappointing to me, because if you had the two distinct different characters' perspectives and then have the third one be an entirely new format, I think I would have enjoyed this book a lot more. So that part just sucked. I really hated getting to the Beatrice chapters, and yeah. Otherwise, I thought the mystery wasn't predictable per se, but I think everything was fleshed out, explained, and then brought together in a way that makes sense. I did not get frustrated at any of the reveals, and I understood that the entire book was framed around the idea of one character being bewitched by something or someone. So all in all, it was a pretty good story. It was just not one that I consider to be extravagantly amazing and something that I will be talking about too much. But I am glad that I read it. The next book that I have that I plan to hopefully finish this month, if not, who knows, is yet another book from the library. I've gotten 4 books from the library this year. I never think that I'm going to be able to pick up anything from the library in January, because that's the time of year everyone thinks that they can do their reading resolutions, right? So they use the library more, they take out more things. So I'm very shocked and delighted that I have all of these books that I can attempt to try and read and all of that. So the next book that I have is called Savage Blooms by S.T. Gibson. This is the author that I enjoy reading, and this is a book that I know nothing about, so I am excited to start this one. With the other author's books, I at least knew the premise well enough, but this one I know absolutely nothing, so I'm going to try to go into it blind. Stay tuned for any of my updates on this, and for my final wrap-up coming very soon. Okay, so here we are at the final wrap-up. This month I attempted to read 6 things, and I only ended up starting 5 things and reading 4 things. So the first thing that I read this year was the comic adaptation of The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. I only ended up giving that one 3 stars because while it was a standard comic adaptation of the first novel, it didn't add anything substantial to making it into an adaptation. That being, it was simply just the plot exposited through dialogue, not a lot of interesting imagery in the drawings, and just not a lot of changes or even expansions on things that I thought would be good in a comic adaptation. It just seemed like it was a standard run-of-the-mill kind of nothing for no reasons. So The Raven Boys was getting a 3-star from me. For my 100 Epic Reads of a Lifetime poster, I attempted to start War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy and only ended up getting 30 pages into it. I will finish this by the end of the year, but I think this is going to take
all year for me, so I want to commit to that properly and get into this properly. But 30 pages isn't that bad of a start. I dipped my toe in, and I like how it is so far. I then read a bunch of Batman Detective Comics single issues. I read issues 708, 709, 710, and 711, and as a collective, I'm counting it as one story read. I gave it 3 stars. I liked this mini arc that included the very famous issue where Batman is forced to use a gun in order to stop Deathstroke's little antics, and I enjoyed it very much. I liked this tiny mini arc in the Detective Comics run. I then attempted to read The Possession of Alba Diaz by Isabel Canas, and I ended up DNFing it at about page 145. I was just not connecting to the story. The possession had just happened, and there were no consequences yet. It was just Alba felt sick, and there was no inciting incident. There was no issue with her possession. People all just started to realize that something was wrong about her and kept doing the sign of the cross at her. She didn't even know what was going on yet. There were no cool, fun possession antics yet, and I realized that the further on that I read, the how little I cared about the characters and the plot going on. I truly did not care what happened to Alba Diaz, so I ended up DNFing it, and I think that was for the best. I then read The Bewitching by Silvia Moreno Garcia, and I ended up giving that one 3 stars as well. Quite a month for my ratings. I did enjoy the story featuring the main character's great-grandmother and her issues with her family and being hunted, essentially, being bewitched by this witch. I thought that was a really interesting one, and I really enjoyed that perspective. I also enjoyed the main character who was set in the 90s. I thought her trying to figure things out with what she's doing for her thesis and how that's connecting to her past and her great-grandmother's past was very interesting, but I thought that the work that she was doing for her thesis, that being reading the diaries of the author that she's studying, was the weakest part of the book, and I did not enjoy that aspect at all, and I thought that it sort of weighted the book down in the end. I didn't enjoy it, but the other 2 perspectives were very interesting, and they connected to each other and tied up very well. I thought the story was good, and I would recommend it more so over Mexican Gothic, the other story that I have read by Silvia Moreno Garcia. And finally, I ended the month by reading Savage Blooms by S.T. Gibson. This is a book by the author that I enjoy that I hadn't heard of because it was published last year, and I haven't heard anybody talk about it. Unfortunately, I haven't heard anybody talk about it with slightly good reason. Now, in my last clip, I didn't really explain the premise, but I have finished the book now, so I will tell you. There are 2 main characters named Adam and Nicola, and they are traveling to Scotland to find this mysterious mansion called Craigmar. And Adam has a connection to this mansion because his grandfather used to tell him stories about this place and how it was so beautiful and so magical, and how he had visited there multiple times when he was younger. So Adam wanted to connect to his grandfather by visiting this place as well. Here he meets 2 people who run the estate, that being the main lord of the manor, Eileen, and her groundskeeper, Finley. And together they solve this mystery that includes fairies, and then they all start to become wildly depraved because of all of the magic going on, the connections between all the characters and the fairies that are tied to the mansion to some capacity. Now, stories like this are typically, a pretty standard, just sexual depravity going on, and this is no different. However, I do like the way S.T. Gibson tries to make a different relationship for all 4 characters involved, essentially all 4 couples involved. However, all of the titillating sexual content in this book was really tame. It was really boring. I was not scandalized by anything going on because it was just so bombarded with explaining how every single person deals with relationships, them all being self-aware of it, and them all having to discuss everything prior to it going on. If you are being controlled by the depravity of the your surroundings and the manor, why are you discussing it in such a therapy speak horribly boring way?
Hi, editing me here just to add on and say that my biggest issue with the novel was the lack of conflict. That being the lack of conflict in the plot, the lack of conflict in the characters, and the lack of conflict in the sex scenes. I will now be complaining more about these sex scenes, so carry on.
Like, the kink in here, there's a little bit of BDSM in here. It's very, very tame and very, very boring, and it's mostly just one character ordering another character around, and sometimes she likes getting her hair pulled. And I just think that it is so tame and so boring. If you're gonna go all the way, if you're gonna explore kink in fiction, you need to do it in a way that seems exciting and titillating, because you are writing the characters. You know their limits, and even testing their limits can be something that can be explored safely in fiction. These are not real people. So the fact that they're all like, oh, are you sure about this? Oh, I don't know if I can do this. Oh, we need to set up a whole thing and make sure everybody is safe and okay. It's fiction. They're not real. They're gonna make it out of this okay, no matter what happens. They're not real. You can close the book. So I think that the failure to properly explore more titillating content in this book was a huge disappointment, because S.T. Gibson has done stuff in her prior books that have been more exciting and better discussions. This one is just so tame, and for the most part it is very, very tame sexual content going on. It is all of the usual sex that you will read in a book, and it is not very exciting. And when they finally reach a lot of the queer scenes, they are either interrupted or they're aggressively gendered. The two men eventually end up having a scene together, and it is so aggressively masculine and just off-putting. And then when the two female characters end up having a scene, it is so feminine and so soft and so gentle, and I'm like, but I won't go into that because that is my own personal frustration. So this book, Savage Blooms, 2 stars from me. I found it quite disappointing. I think it is interesting, though, that there are so many S.T. Gibson books that I like and rate so highly, and then there are a couple so far that I have rated very lowly. So I think that's a very interesting way to read an author, because you can't like every single book that an author puts out. So that's it. That was my reading month. I thought I didn't read a lot because I DNF'd, and then I started a book and didn't get too far into it, but I think I did pretty well for myself, honestly. I really, really hope to read more comics next month, and I hope to get into more interesting books, because all of my ratings this month, I didn't get anything higher than a 3, so that sucked. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video if you like it, and subscribe if you didn't. I will see you all next time. Bye bye.